Early Church Fathers, December 7th, Clement of Alexandria, The Instructor, Book 1, Chapter 11, Part 1, A Compendious View of the Christian Life. The Discipline of Simplicity. I do not forbid the use of gold outright, nor do I ban softer clothing, but I restrain irrational impulses so they do not carry you away through indulgence into voluptuousness. Luxury, rushing forward into excess, kicks up its heels like an unbroken horse, tossing its mane and shaking off the instructor who holds the reins from afar, guiding and drawing the human horse, the irrational part of the soul, toward salvation. This untamed creature strains toward pleasures, toward vicious appetites, toward precious stones, gold, exotic garments, and every other luxury. Above all, remember what was given to us with sacred authority. Keep your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, so that, though they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by observing your good works, glorify God. 1 Peter 2:12. Clothing as a mirror of the soul. I permit simple clothing, clothing of white color, as I have said before. When you set aside the deceit of variegated art and follow the shapes and hues that nature itself provides, you choose the uniformity and simplicity of the truth. Sophocles once reproached a youth, saying he was decked in women's clothes. In the same way that a soldier, sailor, or magistrate wears what fits his station, the temperate person must wear what is plain, fitting, and clean. The law given through Moses also teaches this, for it rejects garments mottled with many colors, like the scales of a serpent. The one who wishes the whole human being to be clean calls for white garments from head to foot, so that through this bodily sign we may learn to put away our shifting, multicolored passions and cling instead to what is simple, stable, and true. Plato, following Moses in this respect, approves only the simplest weaving, the modest work of a chaste woman. White clothing suits gravity and seriousness. Elsewhere he says that dyes and elaborate weaving should be reserved only for war banners. Those who walk in peace and light will choose white. As smoke reveals fire and a steady pulse reveals health, so simple, modest clothing reveals the character of your habits. Temperance is pure and simple. Purity guards conduct from base admixture. Simplicity dismisses all excess. Clothing also serves a bodily purpose. Substantial, unfolded garments retain the body's heat, not because they possess heat themselves, but because they turn it back and refuse it a passage. Whatever warmth they receive, they retain and return, and thus they are suited especially to winter. Temperance is content, and contentment requires no excess. It receives what suffices for the healthy and blessed life shaped by the Word. Modesty for women. Let women wear garments plain and fitting, softer than a man's, yet not immodest or surrendered to luxury. Let clothing suit age, stature, nature, and occupation. For the divine apostle counsels us to put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the lusts of the flesh. Romans 13:14. Earrings and the violation of nature. The Word forbids violence against nature through piercing the ears. And why stop at the ears? Why not the nose too? Fulfilling the proverb, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Proverbs 11:22. If you imagine yourself made beautiful by gold, then you have made yourself inferior to gold, and whoever is inferior to gold is no master of it. That is a shameful confession. As gold is defiled by the filth of the sow that roots in the mire, so those who give themselves to wanton luxury defile true beauty by their excess. Finger rings and their proper use. The Word permits a gold finger ring, one only, but not for ornament. It serves the practical purpose of sealing what must be kept safe in the house. If everyone were well trained, we would need no seals at all. But since lack of discipline gives rise to dishonesty, seals become necessary. There are cases in which this strictness must be softened. Some women have not been blessed with modest husbands. They adorn themselves to please their husbands. Let this alone be their aim. They must not dress for the gaze of strangers, but draw their husbands by chaste affection, a powerful and legitimate charm. When husbands are ruled by irrational impulses, wives must gently calm them and lead them gradually towards sobriety. Decency is not produced by harsh burdens, but by removing excess. Luxuries are like birds with swift wings. They bear women away from the marriage bond. Let them instead bind themselves with the girdle of modesty, so they do not slip from the truth. Men ought to trust their wives and commit the household to them, for this is the partnership God has ordained. But when public business calls us far from home, the word grants us a signet for sealing only what is necessary. All other rings must be cast aside, for instruction is a golden ornament for a wise man. Christian freedom and its signs. Some women wearing gold fear that if their ornaments are removed, they will be mistaken for servants. But true nobility is found in the native beauty of the soul. A servant is not known by buying or selling, but by servile character. We must not appear free, we must be free, trained by God and adopted by God. Therefore I command a manner of standing, walking, gesture, clothing, and conduct suitable for those who are truly free. Let men wear their ring on the little finger, not the joint, for wearing it on the joint is feminine. The little finger keeps the hand free for work, and the ring is less likely to fall off. Let our seals bear a dove, a fish, a ship driven by the wind, a lyre, or an anchor. He who uses a fish will remember the apostle and those drawn out of the water of sin. But we may not engrave the faces of idols, we who must not cling to them, nor may we carve swords or bows, for we follow peace, nor drinking cups, for we hold to temperance. Many who are licentious engrave their lovers or mistresses, as if they wished never to forget their indulgences, but to be perpetually reminded of their sin. Jerome letter in reply to Augustine, AD 404, Part 1, Introduction. The following letter represents Jerome's long-delayed reply to Augustine. After years of crossed messages, lost couriers, and rising tension over biblical interpretation, especially Paul's rebuke of Peter, Jerome finally answers. His tone is sharp but respectful. He insists he has been misunderstood, defends his use of earlier commentators, especially Origen, and pushes back against Augustine's critiques while affirming their shared desire for truth. Opening concerns and the burden of many questions. I received 3 of your letters at once, carried by the deacon Cyprian, which you describe as simple inquiries, though they strike me as pointed criticisms of my writings. I would need a full volume to answer them as they deserve, yet I attempt a shorter reply because our brother is eager to depart and asked me only 3 days ago for something to take back to you. I therefore write quickly, almost without pause, speaking as one thrust suddenly into battle before fastening on his armor. Yet Christ himself is my armor, truth girding my waist, righteousness for my breastplate, the gospel of peace on my feet, the shield of faith to quench the fiery darts of the wicked, the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit. With these weapons David went out against Goliath, choosing 5 smooth stones from the brook, showing by their cleanness that his mind remained pure amid the torrents of the world. With the enemy's own sword he struck him on the forehead, the very place where the impious King Uzziah was smitten, and the very place where the light of the Lord shines upon the faithful. In this same spirit I desire that our debate end in truth's victory. If you correct me, the gain is mine. If I correct you, the gain is yours. Just as Israel once fought with their hearts set upon peace, I wish our contest to be peacemaking, not vainglorious. Therefore I set aside the courtesies and compliments with which you soften your criticisms, and I move directly to the matters in dispute. On the title of my book concerning writers, you first mention a book of mine which came into your hands without a proper title page. Someone told you it was called Epitaphium, Obituary Notices, and you wondered why such a title would be given to a work that includes writers still living. But surely you know the correct title from the book's content. Such works are called On Illustrious Men, or more precisely, On Ecclesiastical Writers. All the Greeks and Latins who have written such catalogues include both living and dead authors. The title Epitaphium belongs only to a work written exclusively about the departed, such as the epitaph I once wrote for the presbyter Nepotianus. Therefore the title was misapplied by those unqualified to correct it. On Paul's rebuke of Peter in Galatians 2. Your next criticism concerns my commentary on Galatians, where I suggested that Paul's rebuke of Peter was not the bare literal event some suppose, but a strategic act for the sake of the church's unity. You say I should not teach falsehood and that Scripture must always be taken literally. Yet before accusing me, you yourself should have remembered my preface, where I explained openly that I was following the commentaries of Origen. Origen wrote 5 full books on Galatians, treated the passage again in the Stromata, and in many other fragments. I have also read Didymus, Eusebius of Emesa, Theodorus of Heraclea, and others who discuss the same matter. I drew from them all. As I dictated, I mixed their insights with my own, sometimes unable to recall the exact source of a statement. At the end of the section you object to, I even invited readers to reject the interpretation if they wished, provided they could show how Paul could condemn in Peter what Paul himself had practiced. My purpose was not to bind the church to one view, but to report the various interpretations of earlier fathers and allow readers to judge. This is the common method of commentators, sacred and secular alike. On your new theory of Jewish and Gentile believers, you propose instead that Paul rebuked Peter because Gentile believers were free from the law, while Jewish believers were still obligated to keep it. Therefore, Peter, as apostle to the circumcision, erred by urging Gentiles to observe Jewish customs. But if this is truly your doctrine, then proclaim it boldly, for it would require many bishops to alter their teaching. As for me, I remain cautious. I live quietly with my fellow sinners in my monastery and do not presume to establish new doctrines. I read the Fathers and preserve their various explanations so that each reader may adopt the one he finds most faithful. This method is ancient, not novel. You have encountered it yourself in your own reading. On my use of Greek sources, you also challenge me for drawing from Greek writers. But what is wrong in learning from those who have labored before us? When I cite Origen or Didymus or Eusebius, I do not enslave myself to their conclusions. I present their thoughts when they are helpful, omit them when they are not, and at times add my own. My aim is the edification of the church, not the glorification of one commentator. If I have erred, correct me. If I have preserved some truth from the Greeks that might otherwise be lost, rejoice with me. I confess freely that I have read widely, and what I have read has shaped what I write. But I have also stated plainly that when interpretations differ, the reader must exercise judgment. Nothing is imposed by coercion. On the spirit of our debate, do not imagine that I write these things angrily. I respect your learning and piety. Your zeal for truth is evident, but zeal must be tempered with caution, lest we condemn the labors of earlier saints without understanding them. I have no desire to quarrel with you, but neither will I allow myself to be accused without offering a defense. Let us therefore continue this discussion as brothers striving for the light, not as rivals seeking victory. Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologica, Part 1-2. Question 58. On the difference between moral and intellectual virtues, combined articles. In what way do moral virtues differ from intellectual virtues? Objections. It seems that there is no real difference between moral and intellectual virtues, for virtue makes a person good, and both moral and intellectual virtues do this. Therefore they are the same in kind. Further, every virtue perfects the soul according to reason. But moral virtues like temperance or courage follow reason, just as intellectual virtues like understanding or wisdom do. Therefore the division is unnecessary. Further, a habit that perfects choice seems more perfect than a habit that merely perfects thinking. Yet intellectual virtues perfect thinking, while moral virtues perfect choosing. If the higher perfects the lower, then intellectual virtues must contain within themselves the moral virtues, making the distinction artificial. Responsio, I answer that the difference between moral and intellectual virtues rests in the very way the human soul is structured. I possess 2 interior powers relevant here. One power knows truth. This belongs to the intellect. The other power inclines toward or away from things. This belongs to the appetite. Therefore, a virtue that perfects my intellect in grasping truth is an intellectual virtue. A virtue that perfects my appetite in choosing what accords with truth is a moral virtue. Intellectual virtues do not need to curb passions because they operate in the order of knowing. Moral virtues, however, must deal with the passions directly because the passions can disobey reason and pull my choices off course. For this reason, moral virtue includes the element of moderation or measure, while intellectual virtue includes the element of clarity or rightness of vision. Moreover, intellectual virtues cause rectitude in understanding, but moral virtues cause rectitude in movement. They direct the whole person toward the good. My intellect shows me the map. My moral virtue allows me to walk the road without veering into the ditch. Both kinds of virtue come from reason, but not in the same way. Intellectual virtue makes reason right in itself. Moral virtue makes the appetite obey that right reason. In this way, intellectual virtue precedes moral virtue, for a person cannot act well until he sees well. But moral virtue completes intellectual virtue, for truth not lived is truth not yet possessed in its fullness. Therefore, moral and intellectual virtues are distinct. One perfects knowing, the other perfects choosing. Quick Summa. Intellectual virtues make my mind right. Moral virtues make my choices obedient to that right mind. One sees the good, the other moves toward it. Kylie and the fork in the road. Kylie walked through the nature trail behind her house, thinking about two very different kinds of strength. She had been studying hard for her engineering exam, sharpening her mind until the formulas came effortlessly. It was exhilarating. But later that same week, she found herself in an argument with her sister, where all her learning did nothing to restrain her temper. Her mind was sharp, but her heart lurched sideways like a startled horse. The contrast bothered her. She wondered how she could be clever enough to solve complex equations, but not gentle enough to hold her tongue. One evening, her grandfather sat beside her on the porch swing. She explained her frustration. He listened quietly, then said, "Seeing the right thing is one kind of virtue. Doing the right thing is another. The mind can learn faster than the heart can obey." Kylie thought about that on her next walk. The path split in two. The posted map helped her know the right way back home, but she still had to choose which direction her feet would go. The map was her intellect. Her step was her morality. She suddenly realized that wisdom without virtue is like a lantern in a traveler's hand, useful but powerless unless he decides to walk the illuminated path. The two must cooperate. Her mind must learn, but her desires must learn to follow. She smiled, took a breath, and walked the path toward home, step by steady step, as though practicing both virtues at once.